how do you enable the people around you? How do you enable your organization to be successful? What is enablement? Back when I was a kid, you did not want to be an enabler. Typically, when you were called an enabler, you were enabling bad behavior. You were enabling people to be an alcoholic or gamble or doing all of these other things. Now, enablement, though, today is starting to shift. We're starting to think about enablement in the context of helping people do the things they want to do better, which is ultimately what drives me in this business. That's my goal, my objective, my mission is to help you do the things you want to do better and faster. And I do it through the combination of systems and process. So let's talk about enablement inside an organization. If I understand the organization, and I know that there are people who are in operations roles, I know that there are people who are in sales roles. I know that there are people in marketing roles. I know that there's product. I know that there's people in finance and accounting. I know that there are people in HR. Basically, I have these bricks that build the business, bricks that build up the business. Well, I've got people inside each of those bricks that are doing interesting things. Well, how do I enable the business? The way I like to think about it is enablement is the mortar that pulls all of these things together. Those through pieces that help actually connect the dots between the functional areas inside the business. So we can enable the business by making sure that the functional areas are connected well and start to create some of those conversions that are necessary in order to move the business forward, which ultimately is what leadership is. Leadership is how we move forward, right? So enablement, I like to visualize and think of enablement as the mortar, the stuff that kind of flows through the organization and helps it do things. If you remember the old BASF commercials from way back when, they would say things like, we don't build the things you use, we make a lot of the things you use better. They enabled that tool, that thing, to be better. They weren't the front point, they were the thing in the background that helped move things forward. And it's taken me a while to really embrace the whole idea of, hey, I'm an enabler. I enable people to do the things they want to do better and faster. And that's where organization enablement comes in. So organization enablement. Now, where did it originate? Well, it originated for me from a sales enablement perspective, where we built a sales enablement function inside Safari Books Online at O'Reilly Media, where we said, look, we have our sales team here, and we put sales at the center. Why? Because that's the function that I was responsible for specifically in the Americas, on the Americas team. And I had different roles there, but we had sales, and then sales had to connect with each of the other individual functional areas of the business. Now, on those other functional areas of the business, they might have thought of themselves as the center, but for us, the way that I looked at it, look, if we're not selling, we're not bringing in money to help fund all of those other things. Remember, revenue is how we fund the ability to do what we do. Leadership is how we move forward. Culture is how we do what we do. And execution is how we achieve results. So from a hub and spoke perspective, one of the problems we were having is we had sales professionals that would talk to people in product or marketing, and they'd say, this is what my customer needs, or this, we need more of this. And if you have multiple highly influential people inside sales roles who are fundamentally driven to support their customers, build for their customers, and will influence others in the business, what ends up happening is they start asking for a lot. And it creates confusion because when 10 people are asking product for something, they might describe it as my customer needs to write in black ink, and someone interprets it as I need to create this, I need to create this, or I need to create a ballpoint pen. And what we end up doing is we're creating a lot of confusion. The enablement function ended up being the capability that we had where a person, a group of people, were responsible for communicating to each of the external resources. So we added a barrier between us and each of those other resources. And the reason that that started working is now we had a Rosetta Stone. We had someone who deeply cared about the other functional pieces of the business who could communicate back and forth between the sales team, support what needed to happen from a sales and success perspective, back to the other functional areas, and then also from the functional areas, they could communicate back to us and what they needed from us. So enablement ended up being the go-between in these areas. And I had a lot of people that were frustrated with me when I did this. It actually was called Kim Jong-Simmons at one point in time. I think they said it just felt like North Korea. Here's the thing. I put the restriction in place to help reduce confusion and accelerate speed to impact inside the organization. It took a while to do it, but that was our first entry into sales enablement. And that was back in 2012, 2013-ish time period. So where are we now? Well, we went from sales enablement to revenue enablement to organization enablement. And ultimately, if we want to help our people do things better, do things faster, achieve the results that they're looking for, let's enable and empower them to do that through the combination of mindset. You've heard me talk about this. So attitude, belief, clarity of definition, skill set, and then tool set. Here's the problem. A lot of people go right to tools first. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm going to tell you, make sure you have a clear view of your attitude, belief, and clarity of definition before you start building skills. Because if you do not have the definitions, you'll start building skills that are unnecessary. Build skills before you start using tools. A fool with a tool is still a fool. A tool in the hands of a skilled professional can be used to create leverage. With that leverage, you can absolutely move the world. If you are looking for help on this kind of stuff, like to think different and ultimately do different when it comes to organization enablement, looking at enablement inside your business, how you can support this not only inside your revenue team, but inside your organization as a whole, and ultimately for your customers, you know a guy. You can find your catalyst at findmycatalyst.com.